Hey there, this is Natalie, and in this video I'm going to talk about the popular ReZero theory that there's something suspicious about our boy Otto. In particular, the theory that Otto is actually Pandora, or is under the control of Pandora, or any other Pandora related things. This isn't one of the most widely talked about theories, but it is one I see come up a lot in the comments of my videos, basically whenever Otto's mentioned. And I think a lot of people like to think about it, because it would be a pretty shocking revelation that would turn the story on its head if Otto was something other than what he seems. But it is not a theory I personally subscribe to. In fact, I honestly hate it. So while I will be giving the reasons why this theory exists and the evidence for it, I'll also be talking about why I really don't think it's going to turn out to be true, based on both things from the ReZero story and the overall role I think Otto is supposed to play from a narrative point of view. So by the end of it, you should be able to make up your own mind. Before I get into this theory, I've already done videos like this about why I don't like a couple of other popular theories, including Subaru is Pride and Subaru is time travel Flugel, as well as plenty of videos with my own theories about ReZero and in support of some more well-known theories that I do think have a good chance of being true, like Al is Pride. So if you're into ReZero theories and are new to my channel, please take a look around and also consider helping me out by hitting the subscribe button. I also do theories and analysis for Attack on Titan, as well as general episode reviews and other anime content, and I really need the love. So please subscribe and ring the bell if you like that sort of thing, because I upload several new videos each week. But with the usual YouTuber nonsense out of the way, let's look at Best Boy Otto. There will be ReZero Season 2 Part 2 spoilers in this video because I'm making it before Pandora has appeared in the anime. But since it's really only Pandora's existence and the general sense of her powers that we get from Emilia's past that's important as a thing, it is safe to watch if you have finished Arc 4, either in the light novels or the web novel. If you're watching this after Emilia's trial of the past has been shown in Season 2 of the anime, or if you happen to have already been spoiled about who Pandora is, because I won't be spoiling any big plot points from beyond Arc 4. I'll also be referring to the if routes, but only the fact that Otto appears in most of them. I won't go into the plots of the if routes themselves. Though, if you do want to know the full stories of the ReZero ifs, and some of the theories and interesting stuff they bring up, I do have videos including the stories and analysis of them for the Pride, Greed and Gluttony ifs that you can watch now if you want, and Wrath will also be coming soon. So to start with, what is the Otto is Pandora theory? Why does anything about Otto suggest he may not be what he seems? And what is there to support this theory as a possibility? There is a video by JakeZ123 that talks about the theory itself and gives more detail about the evidence than I'm going to here, because I want to avoid spoilers from Beyond Arc 4 and from the if routes, and because I'm really making this video to argue against the theory rather than explain all of the evidence for it. So I recommend watching that if you want to know more details, but I'll cover each of the main arguments for why Otto is considered suspicious enough to have a theory like this about him now. The main grounding for the theory is based on the fact that Otto always seems to show up in the story, no matter what choices Subaru makes. As if there's something about him that's marked him out for being involved in all of this stuff that a random merchant wouldn't normally have anything to do with. The only other character who's an outsider to the important things at the core of ReZero's plot, like the royal selection, who gets swept up in it all and ends up having a huge role in it, is Subaru. And of course, in Subaru's case, he's likely to be there because somebody else intended for it, though we don't really know yet whether that was Satella or Flugel or somebody else. He was summoned into the story from another world, and then became involved with Emilia and the royal selection plot in general because of events orchestrated to happen by Roswell, who was following a gospel based on Echidna's Book of Wisdom. There was nothing random about Subaru being fated to play a part in this story, so the reasoning goes that it probably isn't random that this other unconnected person, Otto, always shows up either. And Otto does always show up. In the loop that sticks from Arc 3, where Otto was first introduced to Subaru in the timeline that will continue for him, Otto was being held captive by the witch cult and was found and rescued by Dogman before being taken to Subaru, who Ricardo, Mimi and the others were helping out, as agreed with their boss Anastasia. But Subaru had also met Otto every other time he tried to get back to the mansion in Arc 3, in different ways. In this final loop, where he isn't trying to get back by himself, but has enlisted the help of Krish and Anastasia's factions to help take out the White Whale, he doesn't need to get a ride with a merchant at all, but Otto still ends up meeting him anyway. Equally, Otto shows up in the Pride and Wrath IF routes, even though these deviate from the main story in Arcs 1 and 2 respectively, before Otto meets Subaru in Arc 3. It's natural that he would show up in the other IF routes like Greed and Gluttony. I'm not really going to talk about the Sloth and Lust IFs because those are kind of different from the others, because he's already someone Subaru knows at the start of those, and as of Arc 4, is a key member of the Emilia faction. So naturally, if Tapei's giving an alternative version of the story, he's going to tell us what happened to Otto in it. But a lot of people think his importance in the Gluttony IF is a bit suspicious. I won't go into that too much here because the Gluttony IF is the last one, and it has major Arc 6 spoilers. But Otto is positioned as the biggest threat to what Subaru's trying to do in it, even more than Reinhard. Another thing that's mentioned to support the theory is that Otto has bad luck, to the point of it almost seeming like fate is trying to mess with him. This is usually played for comedy, but it does make the things that happen to him seem like more than coincidences, like there's something influencing Otto's life that will always cause certain things to happen. It's also brought up that when Otto and Subaru first meet in a loop that gets erased, in the light novel, one of them says that it's like they were brought together by fate as they make friends, though it's not made clear whether Subaru or Otto says this specifically. We know that Subaru's fate is being pushed in certain directions by other people, but is Otto part of that? Otto also seems suspicious to some people in some of his actions, like his general support of Subaru. Otto being in the right place at the right time to help Subaru out in Arcs 3 and 4 are key to this. He was able to find and rescue Subaru when he was held captive by Garfield. He was on hand to drive when Subaru needed to save Emilia from the bomb in the carriage in Arc 3. Otto is the person who's able to motivate Subaru and snap him out of his despair so he can turn everything around in Arc 4, as we saw in episodes 13 and 14 of Season 2. Some people speculate that him being able to pull this stuff off is suspicious. In Season 2 episode 15, which at the time of making this video was just aired yesterday, we see Ram talk about how Subaru has incredibly good timing. That's Ram's perception of something we know is because of Subaru's very specific circumstances. So what about Otto's timing? Could this also be the result of something we don't know about him, like Ram doesn't know about Return by Death? The suspicion around Otto's actions to support Subaru is also partly because Otto's someone who's shown to be intelligent and cunning, but when it comes to Subaru, we see him act in a way that kind of defies his usual rationality. He trusts Subaru and comes up with plans to help him that definitely put Otto himself in a lot of danger, even though Subaru can't tell him many of the details. This makes some people suspect that Otto actually knows a lot more than it seems, and that his role in the story is not what it looks like. That he's not in ReZero to be a genuine friend and accomplice for Subaru, but he's someone working towards a certain goal of his own, and perhaps manipulating events to go a certain way. There's also the matter of Otto not appearing in Roswell's Gospel, and this meaning that Roswell didn't have the full information he would have needed when making the bet with Subaru. This in itself is fairly interesting, though whether that is even going to be mentioned in the anime version of things is still unknown at this point. So these are all the reasons why Otto seems to a lot of people like he could be a suspicious character, who there will be some big reveal about later on. But why would that lead to a theory that Otto is Pandora specifically? Well, one reason is simply that, to be honest, whenever there's a gap in a theory for ReZero, or something mysterious that needs an explanation, Pandora, the Witch of Vainglory, is pretty easy to insert in. This is because we know hardly anything about her, but we know enough to get the idea she's going to end up being very important, and probably will be involved in the answers to a lot of the mysteries. So far, we only see Pandora during events from the past, such as the first time we become aware she exists, which is when she tried to open the seal in Emilia Forest, as Emilia saw in the Trial of the Past. We also know from something later that I won't go into too much, that she was present for the first attempt to subjugate the white whale, which is where Wilhelm's wife Theresia was killed. This would mean she has been seen in her usual Pandora form during Otto's lifetime, but being in two places at once would probably be no problem at all for Pandora, so I don't think that really rules anything out. Equally, she could have only taken control of Otto at a later moment in his life, rather than from birth, with some people speculating that perhaps this was what caused the awakening he had to his divine protection when he was 10, which we saw in Season 2, Episode 15, as arriving as a very sudden thing. Pandora's powers are both mysterious and very OP. We don't know how it works yet, but she can basically change reality with her words. When she wants Regulus to leave, she just says that he was never there, and reality changes so that Regulus was always back home with his wives. She can even use this to make it so that she simply didn't die when someone kills her. She's bound to have some trick to this, of course, but we have no idea what it is yet, or what the limitations of it are, so it leaves Pandora ripe to be the answer behind just about anything odd going on in the ReZero world, until Tappei gives us some more information about her to work with. If Pandora is the puppet master behind everything, and wanted to insert herself into a position where she could get involved with Subaru and manipulate things happening within the story from a position close to him, then either becoming or controlling a person like Otto would allow her to do that. And it seems like she would have no trouble being able to do it if she wanted to. There is also, by the way, a theory that I think carries a bit more weight than this Otto one, though to be honest that isn't really saying much, that Pandora either is Rem or created Rem. So theories of Pandora wanting to put herself into these events in some form are not limited to this fairly crackpot one. We don't know Pandora's goals or motivations in general, but we do know that she wants to open the seal in Emilia Forest, and has an interest in Emilia because of that at the very least. So even that is enough for her to want to be meddling with the events surrounding Subaru, Emilia, and the royal selection. Then there is their appearance. Tappei generally uses things like hair and eye colour as a way of identifying his characters and characters who are connected to each other. Reinhard's family line, even going back to the original Sword Saint of 400 years ago, all have bright red hair, for instance. Pandora has platinum hair and blue eyes, which is not dissimilar to Otto, who has grey hair and, well, his eyes are never described in either version of the novels, but appear as blue or grey blue in the light novel artwork and anime. Grey hair and blue eyes, therefore, means Otto has the same colouring as my dad. I mean, similar colouring to Pandora. But now, I'm going to start debunking things, and I'm going to start with the very thing I just said about colouring. Otto does indeed have colouring that is close to Pandora's, but crucially not the same in the way that Tappei uses colour to identify characters and connections. He's made it clear that while Emilia's hair is often described as white by fans, Emilia and Fortuna, who are related, as well as Satella, have silver hair, and this is intentionally distinct from the characters with white hair like Echidna and Regulus, and from Pandora's hair, which is platinum, not white or silver. Otto's hair is grey, not silver or platinum. Yes, silver and platinum are shades of grey, and can also look similar to white as a hair colour when the characters are drawn, but Tappei doesn't draw them, or, as he said in interviews, even have a clear picture of what they look like in his mind when he first introduces them in his story. He chooses words to describe them, and if he chooses different words for different characters' colouring, like the different Japanese words for grey and platinum or platinum and silver, then he probably doesn't intend for them to be taken as identifying a connection, even if they're in the same colour family. There are also only so many colours in existence, and ReZero has a large cast, and so naturally only some colour choices will be special in terms of meaning something in the story. Beatrice, Minerva, Felt, Garfield and Liliana are all blonde, for instance, but it's unlikely to mean anything that connects them. Though, having said that, why does nobody ever talk about how Roswell and Mei Li both have navy blue hair? Maybe that's a topic for another theory. In any case, Otto's family have now been shown, and his hair matches his brother's, so it seems like Otto's colouring doesn't really have anything to do with Pandora, and if it was supposed to be a meta clue from Tappei that they were connected, I think it would be stronger, perhaps with some of Otto's distinctive green colour palette showing up in Pandora's clothes design, which has no green in it whatsoever. So next point, Pandora's powers probably would enable her to become or control Otto. Well, yes they would, as far as we know, but with what we've seen of Pandora's powers, there's basically nothing that it's been confirmed that she couldn't do. It would seem to make very little sense that someone who can change reality at will would really bank on a plan as convoluted as inserting herself into Subaru's life as a random merchant to reach whatever Pandora's goal is. Equally, if she was going to live or create a whole life just to get involved in this story at the age of 20, which is Otto's age when he meets Subaru, what really makes sense about the hardships Otto went through when he was younger, which we saw in his backstory in Season 2, Episode 15? Why would he have a divine protection that allows him to talk to animals, which is useful and all, but as Subaru says himself in the Greed If, not really essential in any big overall plans? That doesn't really seem like the type of person Pandora would create or possess. From the perspective of Tappei creating characters, it just makes a lot more sense that an unlucky merchant with an interesting but definitely not OP divine protection and a fairly grounded backstory would be a character he'd create for just what Otto seems to be in the story. An important friend and ally for Subaru, who brings in a different perspective from being initially unconnected to any of the factions. If he was designing a character who the Witch of Vainglory would use to infiltrate the story, as it were, everything about Otto just seems too inconvenient for a character like Pandora to choose. Tappei isn't averse to making OP characters where they make sense to exist, so why wouldn't he have her make or choose someone who seems to have been blessed by the world to a crazy degree, like Reinhard or Priscilla? Speaking of Priscilla, she canonically has extremely good luck, to the point where it's almost considered a power. This means that in this setting, luck is a quantifiable thing that people do or don't have or have in different amounts. Some people believe real life is like that, whereas others think luck is just a matter of superstition, but that isn't important for the ReZero world, where because of Priscilla, we do know for sure that luck exists as something more like an RPG stat. That would explain Otto's bad luck without there being anything suspicious about him at all. Just as he was born with a divine protection that has its own upsides and downsides, which is true of a lot of people in this setting, he was also born with bad luck. No strange warpings of fate or unusual coincidences needed. And it could be that luck that leads to Otto always appearing in Subaru's life in Arc 3, no matter what else happens. I would have thought if Otto's very existence was Pandora's way of getting herself into Subaru or Emilia's lives to influence the story, then wouldn't it have made more sense for him to have made contact with Subaru on his first day at the capital? If Otto's involvement in the story is something that was orchestrated by one of the most powerful characters in this setting, why doesn't he show up until Arc 3? Yes, Otto does show up in the Wrath and Pride IFs, in which nothing else in Arc 3 happens, but in Pride at least, he doesn't really do anything that matters to the plot, and is more there, I think, for narrative reasons, to show the differences in Otto and Subaru's lives and friendships in this alternate route, rather than because Otto is Pandora and needs to get involved with Subaru for some goal. Also, I mean, fan service is a thing. If Tappei is writing an alternate route, why wouldn't he still want to put what happened to characters we care about in it, even if they haven't shown up yet at that point in the main route? If it's plausible that Otto could show up, why not have him do it? But these explanations for the things people say are sus about Otto aren't the main reason why I don't think Tappei had it in mind for Otto to have been Pandora, or indeed anything else different to what he seemed all along. The main reason is that Subaru's story loses a lot of its meaning if Otto isn't sincere in his friendship with him, and Subaru's story is the story, so I can't see him throwing in curveballs that break the integrity of a lot of its key themes just to create big surprise revelations. For Subaru's story to work as it does, it needs an Otto. It doesn't need a surprise twist that Pandora was behind something all along. In fact, Subaru's character development doesn't even need Pandora or someone like her to be in the story at all. That stuff will no doubt lead to exciting developments and interesting mysteries, but these are the external factors that Subaru encounters that drive the plot forward, and they can really be anything that Tappei thinks of that would be cool to have happen and still work. And the story won't lose its integrity no matter how many twists there are in the external plot, as long as the internal aspects of the journey Subaru is on continue to mean something and feel like a progression. These more internal aspects of the story that happen to Subaru as he develops in this world do require for certain relationships to exist, and certain things to be sincere though. And Otto being someone who genuinely wants to be friends with Subaru and support him, even without being able to know the whole truth, is one of those things. A character who at first seems like a supportive and helpful friend, but turns out to be hiding things, making it harder for Subaru to trust others. Well, yeah, that was part of his development too, but that role was given to Echidna. Otto being able to turn Subaru back onto the path of relying on others after that is one of the most important things that helps Subaru keep moving forward, and that is really the way Subaru develops the most in Arc 4. There was a very good video by Kyle Robes called The Loneliness of ReZero. Unfortunately, one of the videos taken down by the spate of Kadokawa copyright strikes this week, in case you thought I was going to make it through this whole video without mentioning that. Though, hopefully, like all the other videos affected, it will be back up when this situation has been resolved. But in Season 2, Arc 4, ReZero stops being about loneliness. The loneliness of characters like Emilia, Beatrice, Garfield, Otto, and Subaru begins to be replaced by a sense of belonging to a strange but cohesive unit, and Subaru's friendships and relationships become more than just people he likes and so wants to save. They become the people he faces his challenges with, and depends on where it's possible or appropriate to. Otto is the one who explains to Subaru that he doesn't have to do things alone, even if he does have to keep secrets. And that's far too important to Subaru's character arc and to the progression of themes in the stories to be undermined for a shock twist. But with all of that said, while I do not think even for a minute that Otto is sus, and I think it would make the story worse if he was, after the initial excitement of the bombshell dropping, I don't think that rules out that there may be something Otto doesn't know about influencing him, as a means of manipulating Subaru and events as a whole. I don't think Otto is Pandora, I don't think he's Pandora's puppet, but I could maybe be persuaded by a theory where, perhaps, Otto's divine protection was caused by Pandora, knowing he would end up in Subaru's faction in the future, and be being used as a way to communicate information to him that could manipulate the actions he takes. Nobody else can talk to bugs or ground dragons or cats or whatever, and Otto can hear so many creatures around him when he tunes into his powers, all of which he trusts not to be lying, because he knows them to be animals that think like animals, and so wouldn't have any reason to lie to humans. Surely this would be a very good way for somebody with all kinds of magical abilities to manipulate him. Additionally, while I don't think it has anything to do with any nefarious schemes, I can also see there being some kind of link of fate between Subaru and Otto that brings them together in the first place. Maybe in the same way Subaru seems destined to fall in love with Emilia, he's also destined to become friends with Otto. Who knows, maybe when the truth of why Subaru is in this world at all is revealed, Otto will turn out to be the reincarnation of somebody from 400 years ago, and something like that will be the answer. I mean, Hoshin of the Waste was a merchant. Just putting it out there. In any case, while there could be revelations still to come about Otto, and yeah, maybe the explanations for why he always shows up won't be something as mundane as because, well, Tappei wanted him to be in the story, so he's in the story. I strongly think that the Otto we see and who Subaru makes friends with is sincere, and as far as he himself knows at least, is just what he seems to be. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. That's all for this video, but thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.